Hi, this is Jamey from Stonemaier Games, and I'm here today to talk about my favorite game mechanism in a game called Patchwork by Uwe Rosenberg. Patchwork is a two-player game where each player is building their own quilt using pieces that kind of look like Tetris pieces, but there are a bunch of different shapes and sizes. There are some that are as small as one little cube and others that are a lot bigger like these pieces. And I've really been loving this game. I don't play a lot of just strictly two-player games, but I really enjoy this game. And I think one of the reasons why, and this is my favorite mechanism in Patchwork, is the time mechanism, the use of time as a resource. In Patchwork, the player whose turn it is, and this is similar to a game called Tokaido, each player has their little token on the score track, and the player whose current turn it is the player who's further back on the track. So if I've used a lot of time to patch up my quilt and the other player is still back here, they might take a turn that only requires like 3 time, and it's still their turn because they haven't caught up to me in the future yet because I'm still working on my quilt. And I love this just as a basic resource. There are only 2 resources in the game. One is, so when you buy one of these tokens, let's see if I can get up close, this tile costs 10 buttons, which is the main resource, and 4 time. So when I buy this, I have to spend 10 tokens to be able to afford it, and I have to also move up 4 time spaces. That's the time it takes me to sew this onto my quilt. Now this does the obvious thing of determining turn order and maybe trying to choose pieces that give you extra turns essentially before the other player gets to go. But it also creates a really interesting mechanism with the way the board is set up. In Patchwork, whenever your piece lands on or crosses a button, you take income equal to the number of buttons on your quilt. So if I only had this token out there on my quilt and I landed on this blue button, I would gain an income of 3 blue buttons, 3 buttons. And so this is this is an interesting element of the time mechanism because I may choose a slightly suboptimal tile just so it doesn't take me up to this button, and then just so I have an extra turn to get one more tile that gives me extra income so that when I cross the button, my income is greater than what it would be than if I jump forward. The other way this is relevant is on the board, you can see these little square patches. When you set up the game, you put 1x1 squares or patches on top of these spaces, and the first player to reach that space or cross over it gets that little patch. And in the game, you're trying to fill up your player mat. You can kind of see it in here in the box. You're trying to fill up the player mat with fill up as many squares as possible. At the end of the game, there's a penalty if you haven't filled up squares. It's -2 points per square. And so these little tokens really help you fill in spots where maybe you didn't do a very good job. Like if you set up tokens like this, you didn't do a good job of filling up that space. So you can put that small token in there. So it gives players a reason not just to hang back and get more turns and optimize their income, but also sometimes jump forward to get these little patches. This is such an elegant, streamlined game, and I learned it in probably literally 4 or 5 minutes at most, and yet it offers such depth because of that time mechanism. I really love what Uwe did with this, and I love games that use time mechanisms like this. Like I talked about how Tzolk'in uses time as a resource. Tokaido does as well. I believe Thebes does as well. And I love your suggestions for other games or games that we're currently designing that use time as a resource, because I love that mechanism, especially when it's done as brilliantly but as streamlined as it is in Patchwork. Let me know what you think. Thanks.